Hello everybody. Let's continue our path on Roman declamation from forum to boardroom. Culture in declamation part 2. As usual, let's try to stretch our mind, our soul, our body a bit with our welcome meditation. The Living Forum, a welcome meditation on culture in declamation. Settle the body, open the forum. As I was saying, sit upright, feel grounded. Let your hands rest lightly on your lap. If you can, close your eyes and breathe in through the nose for 4, 5 counts. Feel the walls, the sky, the sun around you, and the warm tone of today, Friday, July 11th, 2025. Be here, be in the now, ground yourself, feel like some roots go into the underground. Be comfortable behind your eyes, in the center of your head. Turn off the analyzer, the music, the chit-chat, the other people. Be just yourself in the center of your head. Open up your energy, your chakras, your center, feel your center. And imagine that you are yourself in the forum. Hear the multitude of the forum. Imagine you stand beneath Rome basilica arches. To your left, a freed woman bargains over grain prices. To your right, a senator dictates a decree. Foreign merchants argue tariffs in clip Greek. Slave boy hums a provincial lullaby. Every accent, every rhythm fills the air like a living mosaic. Try to imagine that picture, yourself in some forum, getting ready, warming up, practicing your oratory, your speech. Summon the hidden voices. Remember our characters in Roman declamation. Let 4, 5 figures step forward, each bearing a strand of Rome cultural tapestry. The merchant, who fears new taxes, yet trusts the promise of Roman roads. The patrician daughter, the son, who studies rhetoric. Hungry for a voice beyond the atrium. A veteran legionary, scared by distant wars, and fear that his son is not returning from the war. Unsure where loyalty ends and longing begins. Then slave scribe, whose titles records lost and deny him liberty. Read to them silently. Notice their emotions, their ambition, their anxiety, their luxurious, their pride, their sorrow. Hold their stories for a heartbeat. Take a deep breath and look within. Ask yourself, which voice do I understand least? Breathe into the discomfort. In RD, every unheard story is a blind spot in judgment. Every perspective master is a new lens for your leadership. Set your intention. Speak for yourself, by yourself, and for the city. Try to whisper inwardly, in my rhetoric, my oratory, recognize every accent, confront every prejudice, honor every dignity. Imagine your words becoming a bridge where class, gender, and origin meet without fear. Return with humanitas. Throw the multitude into your lungs. Exhale gently, releasing bias, burden, stress. Let's open our eyes. Grab a piece of paper and your pen. What did you saw in that forum, with that characters? Try to write up a couple of lines. Try to describe it accordingly. What colors did you saw? What noises you heard? How were you feeling? Where are you coming from? Maybe from work, from traffic. Do you have any pain in your head, your neck, your knee, your elbow, your lower back? Don't judge it, just let them be, feel it, embrace it. Embrace it as a good Roman orator that you are becoming. So, take a couple of minutes to write it down. White piece of paper, your old notebook. What did you saw? What did you feel? What are your hearings? What are your emotions? How would you feel giving great speech presentation to your boss, to your colleagues, to your peers, to lead a learning and development forum, for example? What would be your introductory speech? Gather some themes, some ideas, some brainstorming. Write it down. Remember the power of our pen and our white piece of paper in our notebook, or just plain white sheets. Reflect a moment. If you want, then comment on the comment section on the LinkedIn page. So welcome to Culture Declamation Part 2. Make your speech give shape to silent and breadth to the narrow, forging unity from difference. As Rome once stood strong, we must strive again. Remember, you are a great orator. You just need to gather some ideas that our great Roman orators like Publius Flaccus, Quintilian, Cicero, the great Cato, Seneca, left us as our cultural heritage. Said this, welcome. Let's continue with our Culture in Declamation, Part 2. Our ancestors were much more careful. They understood that there is nothing so sacred and wickedness would not, at some time or another, attempt to violate. For this reason, they conceived a punishment for patricide, very different from other punishments. Set up yourself. the Sophistopolis. Remember, we are entering with some cultural elements like magic, several characters. You, as a narrator, has gathered this power. Remember that your voice, that your speech has power in Spanish, in English, in any language do you want. I will recall that this content is in English because almost all the content I have, Roman declamation, from culture, from Roman speech and oratory culture, is in English. But we can set up trainings, personal trainings in Spanish, like a form of consultation. If you are interested, please send me a message on LinkedIn on the comment section. I will be glad to help, to organize for you, help you craft a compelling message with the Roman declamation structure that we have reviewed. Let's begin, said that. Welcome, this is lecturer Victor Marcos. Remember to craft, develop your activity. At the end of this chapter, it will be posted accordingly on the LinkedIn article and shared through my socials at my company page, which is MRC Strategies, and in my personal LinkedIn. So, both in Pseudo-Quintilian and in Cicero, the mayores appear to be endowed with a superior capacity of foresight, thanks to which they are able to conceive of situations that others, less sensible than they, have not taken into account. The mayores are, moreover, always attribute extraordinarily juridical creativity, as occurrence in both authors of the verb excogitari suggests. In one case, they have conceived of a punishment that is entirely unique, the penalty of the sack, which conceive of a punishment very unique. Its cruelty mirrored the extreme nature of the crime it sanctioned. Remember that in Roman declamation we open up all boundaries to punishment, to crime, to even cruelty, the patricide. In another case, the creativity consists in formulating a law that in its working seems deliberately fashioned to not leave out any crime that may escape legislators' awareness, and thus lack provisions in existing law. The declaimer's words are uttered in the imaginary context of the Sophistopolis. Open up your imaginary to your writings. You are no longer in your country, in your city, you are in the Sophistopolis of our virtual world of writing and oratory. And yet they reflect conditioned reflexes of Roman culture. In this case, the belief that they possessed a legal system superior to any other thanks to the wisdom of the Declamation Mayores. All these aspects do not amount to a comprehensive philosophy of history. However, they reflect a widespread sentiment in Roman culture. This has an interesting consequence. In passages such as those we have cited before, in part 1, the profile of the imaginary city of Sophistopolis of the rhetoricians ends up coinciding with Rome itself. Remember, Sophistopolis is an example of Rome. The past to which the protagonists of the declamations refer is one familiar to the readers. from the exemplar of virtues, vices, constantly evoked in this Latin historiographical tradition. Those declamation mayores of whom the rhetoricians speak are the same as those to which Cicero and Livy allude. Imagine that you are Cicero, you are Livy, you are Pseudo-Quintilian, you are Calpurnius. What are you seeing of your city, in your community, in your work? A particular problem that you need to address, something that you need to punish with the law, with virtues, vice you need to eradicate from your organization, from your society. Write it, brainstorm it. With that information, we can then extrapolate it into our oratory exercise. The line between the fictitious world of the declaimers and the real world of the city shrinks almost to disappear when we make this exercise of oratory declamation. At the same time, the contents of different declamations confirm the pessimistic vision of history, of which they are themselves bearers, populated by often unspeakable passions, ruby claims on power, petty hereditary aspirations, thirst, even for sex, for money, for luxury. This controversia paints a picture of a degenerate world that has abandoned forever any aura of greatness and looks back nostalgically to the deliciora secula behind it, happiness behind it, the different aspect. Remember a happy past that you would like to recall and would like to implement it on your present time. What values, what ethics would you like to share in your declamatory discourse? Aware that those times are lost and never to return, but they can be recalled and posted in your oratory exercise. Okay, let us come finally to the most expansive dossier, that of the relation between declamation and vast narrative. And literary imaginary of the ancient world. Here too, there is a micro and macro level, in the plane of specific motives. It is not difficult to trace declamation literary ancestries. For example, the description of storm scenes, as in Seneca's Atopos of Latin literature from the archaic period, or in the theme of Odia Fraterna studied by Emanuel Berti and exemplified by the controversy that opens Seneca's anthology. What is more, declamations have been called novels in miniature. Craft your novel with themes such as that of the daughter of the pirate. Craft your themes. For example, imagine you were the daughter of this pirate navigating the coasts of Africa or maybe Italy. What would you see in that ship? What characters are there with your father? What laws are broken? Stealing, cheating, raping, constant drinking. Recall it on yourself in a novel. More generally, one thread of research promoted by Daniel van Malmeder and followed by Lucia Passetti and Nicola Homke has always insisted on the fictional character of declamation. Above all, the complete pieces that can be read in the larger collection of Pseudo-Quintilian often exhibit a strongly literary character, expressed through frequent allusions to tragedy in the quest for suspense. in the spectacularization of situations. Put some spectacle in your oratory. Maybe a great view, a great spectacle, some circus. In this sense, declamation configures itself as an excellent example of consumption literature, capable of satisfying the Roman public's hunger for entertainment. Entertain with your oratory skills, with your many novels, written and then declaim with the power of your voice, with your imagination. I know it's easier said or read than done, but stay with me. Remember, this is an introductory course. Advanced course will be more about setting up the theme and the declamation. This approach has the merit of underscoring the literary components of declamation, its character as a sophisticated intellectual game liable to be undertaken in forms disconnected from precise didactic contexts, its connection with narrative, and in particular with the novel. I would not, however, agree in making a rigid distinction between school declamations and show declamations, as Homke proposes. In the hands of the most promising and skilled students, as yourselves, or the most talented teachers that I am aspiring to be, and on occasion of the open days, when schools were open to the larger public, it is clear that performances reach a level of literariness that probably was not expected of the everyday practice in the classroom, without being possible to delineate typological differences too precisely. Research has also led to the understanding that the relationship between school rhetoric and literature is bidirectional. Controversies influence other literary genres, as long acknowledged, sometimes critically, for the excessive rhetoricization that such influence brought about. Often the influence goes in the other direction, however. To give only a couple of examples, highlight again by Daniel van Malmeder, our academic researcher on declamation and culture in Rome. For example, harsh theme, the theme of cannibalism, developed in Cadaverius Pasti from Pseudo-Quintilian declamation, that deals with the dramatic case of a city devastated by famine. Surviving inhabitants are compelled to eat human bodies. Alludes to the myth of Thyestes in terms similar to those of Seneca's tragedy. The final peroration, with a picture it paints of the infernal punishments that await those who have eaten human flesh. The sins have resemblances to Seneca's Phaedra as well. You can also go to maybe other words, word from the damned, from people that will be casted out because of their terrible crimes. Then you emerge as the pure fortis. David Mayor, Gemini Languentes also appear to allude to this piece. There, a mother promises to the twin, dead after vivisection, to collect and recompose his limbs, evoking Jesus looking upon the body of Hippolytus in the final of Seneca's tragedy. Through these allusions, declamation emphasizes its literary chops. In the latter case, we know too a taste for scenes of dismemberment and mutilation that characterizes much of Latin poetry of the early imperial period. Remember, maybe some extreme violence too, and images to highlight your vision. Remember that images speak louder than words. Giovanni Longo has also highlighted numerous literary reminiscences in the 20 declamations of Odi Poti of Pseudo Quintilian's major collection, where a young man makes an accusation of poisoning against the meretrix from whom he has received a drink that causes him to be rejected. Remember, the magic potions. Lexical as well as more substantive allusions to Catullus' poetry, more generally to elegy, and the situations of comedy demonstrate the vast literary background declaimers were able to exploit and filter in their compositions. It is not possible to trace every connection between declamation and narrative here. Moreover, such connections occur at different levels, including cases where novels feature scenes that recall the settings of controversies, with two parties required to state their claims before an audience. Let us consider a highly instructive example then. In Seneca's Controversia 1.2, whose theme was translated before, presents an intricate case. A virgin has been abducted by pirates and sold to a pimp, who compels her to prostitute herself. The woman succeeds, however, in convincing her clients to pay her without actually sleeping with her because of her quiet oratory skills and intelligence. When a soldier refuses to go along with this request, she then kills him. She is then brought to court, absolved, and restored to her family. Later, she tries to enter a priestly order that is easily identifiable as the Vestals, familiar to the Roman audience. As always, the theme of the controversy is accompanied by a law. Set up this kind of laws. What would happen to that girl? The jury would condemn her or absolve her. What laws could you use in this case? Reflect a little bit, research. Now we can use a great deal of quick research with the chat GPT or the Grok, different AI models that we can use in order to research these topics in order for us to expand our knowledge and our speeches, which impose on the aspiring priestess the requirement of being chaste and the daughter of chaste parents, pure and the daughter of pure parents. The debate thus revolves around the question of status finitivus, or more precisely, a duplex question finitiva, because definitions need to be given both for chaste and pure, and daughter of chaste parents or of pure parents. Set up your definitions or research them. What would be a pure girl, pure daughter, pure parents, chaste parents for you? Set them up. That would be your base law. An interesting discussion of the categories of castitas and puritas in Roman culture follows, but this does not interest us so much at this point as the improbable misfortunes or rhetoricians envisage for their harlot priestess, for making the case more complicated and for putting the talent of the students to the test. Let's make the test. What would happen to that girl? She would be convicted, absolved, because it's an extraordinary case of abduction, which is a common motive of various literary genres, beginning with comedy. The Bordello episode has a specific parallel in the Greek novel Anthea and Habor comes by Xenophon of Ephesus, likely belonging to the late 1st-2nd century. The protagonists of this story are also abducted by pirates and separated after marriage. Naturally, Anthea is a very beautiful heroine, young daughter, as heroines of novels are always. But in your case, it doesn't need to be. Portray your heroine or your hero as you want to. Maybe you are the hero, the heroine of your story, and all who encounters her fall in love, to the point that she too is forced to pick up a sword and kill one of her suitors, when he refuses to be persuaded and tries to take her by the force. The situation of the controversy is also closely matched by Anthea's sale to a pimp of Tarentum after she arrives in Italy. To preserve her chastity, the protagonist of the novel takes an epileptic fit, thanks to which she escapes the visitors of the bordello, who have already gathered in a large number and who are ready to pay a handsome fee to sleep with her. The story of Tarsia is also similar to that of the harlot priestess. Tarsia is the protagonist of the late antique novel history of Apollonius, king of Tyre. She is abducted also by pirates, sold to a pimp of Mytilene, and also persuade her clients with the story of her misadventures. What would be that misadventures that you would like to write about and talk about? We recognize that even in the cases like this, it is not possible, and perhaps not even important, to determine the exact relationship between a novel and declamation. If in the past an evolutionary count has prevailed, viewing the rhetorical novel in miniature as a matrix of novelistic developments, today it seems more reasonable to suppose that rhetorical teachers and narrators drew on the same shared imaginary, in which motifs circulated widely and were adopted into very different literary genres. Another interesting aspect of the relationship between school rhetoric and literature involves tragedy and therefore myth. Remember, tragedy, myth, magic, potions, abduction, which is a principal resource of the tragic theatre. The presence of myth in the rhetorical controversia manifests itself, mostly indirectly, not that it is, through explicit allusions to this or that figure of the mythological universe, but more subtly through the use of narrative elements that the reader is called upon to recognize, despite their readaptations, within the new framework that they are found. Thus, Daniel van Malmader and Graciana Brescia has drawn attention to Pseudo-Quintilian's Minor 299, Ossa Erruta Parisidae, whose female protagonists turn between the law of the city that forbids violating tombs and her father's deathbed command to disinter his son, guilty of his murder, recalls the figure of Antigone, which states, as you can see on your screen, patricides should be expelled without burial. Legal action is allowed for violation of a tomb. On his deathbed, a father entrusts his daughter with avenging him, stating that he has been poisoned by his two sons. The girl presents the charge against them. Pending trial, one of the two kills himself and is buried in the family cemetery. After the other is condemned and has been expelled without burial. The girl disenters the bones of the one who has been buried and casts them out. She is accused of violating his tomb. What would you do in this case? What laws were available? Another case of mythic reuse is Seneca's The Elder Controversia 1.6. Kira's son is captured by pirates and kept prisoner in expectation of ransom. As the young man awaits the intervention of his father, the daughter of the pirate captain falls in love with him and promises to free him if he agrees to marry her and take her away of that pirate life. The plan is quickly realized and the two return together to the protagonist's city of origin. But Anorba appears, the rich heiress who is a Roman equivalent of the Greek Epikleros, and the father forces his son to abandon his young bride. The lawfulness of the marriage is in any case doubtful, and to take the new woman as his wife. When the son refuses, he is disinherited. In this narrative design, it is not difficult to detect the myth of Medea and Jason, also marked by marriage request, the flight of the two lovers on Colchis to Greece, and finally the crisis between the hero and the barbarian, which, when the possibility arises of a more advantageous and more honorable match with the daughter of the king of Corinth. The Declamation draws on myth in a selective way, taking on only some of its traits, and the borrowing only goes so far as to allow the school theme to channel it along well-worn paths. In this case, a conflict between obedience to a father, who moreover had not ransomed the young man quickly, and sincere attachment to the woman to whom he owes his safety. A conflict ended up in the most classic abdication. The influence of the Theban myth and of the particular reading that the Euripides Phoenician woman gives to it can easily be recognized in a theme such as that of minor 326, which you can see on your screen. Tormented by plague, they send an ambassador to consult the oracle. The oracle responds that they need to sacrifice the ambassador's son. Returning to the city, the ambassador reports that rituals were required, while to his son he confesses the truth. The rituals are undertaken, but the plague does not end. Then the son puts himself forward in the assembly and kills himself. The pestilence ends, and the ambassador is accused of harming the state. In the tragedy, the Athenian playwright introduces a figure of Menoesus, who it appears was unknown to preceding variants of the myth. When Eteocles asks Creon to consult the seer Tiresias to learn how to defeat the Argive army besieging the city, he reveals that Theban victory depends on sacrificing Creon's son Menoeus, precisely who must be sacrificed to Ares. Following the departure of Tiresias, Creon tries everything to persuade Meneus to flee before the oracle's reply is known. The young man pretends to agree to his father's request, and then alone reveals to the chorus, through a monologue, his real intent to take his own life, to ensure the victory of the city that produced him. As may be seen, despite the different context, war in one case, plague in the other. Tragedy and declamation present close analogies, especially in the father's attempt to save his son's life, and the son's choice to hasten the sacrifice for the common good or the city. In other cases, there is no specific myth in the background, but a kind of myth theme or motive that recurs across a series of related stories. Thus, Seneca's Controversia presents the case of a son who condemned in a domestic trial for a patricide and put to sea by his brother on a decommissioned boat, encounters some pirates as he drifts at sea and becomes their leader. As their captain, he captures his fathers, whom he releases without ransom. The theme concludes with the father's return and the disinheritance of the brother, evidently for having failed to fully carry out the job of avenging the presumed patricide. This recalls the motif typical of the mythic biographies of founders of the abandoned baby, who not only survives, but also overcomes the status of outcast and becomes the advocate of a new state of things, the foundation of a city, the introduction of new techniques, or something new, or the hero that returns to Rome and kills a tyrant, like we can see the imagery, the film of Gladiator 2, which is a great one. Set yourself in this kind of scenarios to try to write your motives and oratories. The motifs are attested widely across different cultures, whether in the myth of the Akkadian king Sargon, the story of Moses, or the twins Romulus and Remus, or some variants of the myth of Oedipus, as seems obvious even from the brief account given here. When recalled rhetoric absorbs episodes and motifs of myths and its universe, it subjects them to a process of degradation. The hero Jason and the princess Medea, daughter of the king of Colchis, become a generic adolescence and the daughter of a pirate captain, certainly also barbarian, yet not coming from a fabulous kingdom in the east, but from a radically other world, like that of the pirates is in Declamation. As for the other princess of myth, the beautiful Glauce, she is substituted by anonymous Orba, whose only claim on the young man is the wealth she brings as a dowry. Similarly, the vicissitudes that bring Sargon, Moses, and Romulus to be leaders of their respective peoples are reduced in controversia to the much less honorable rise of the son, suspected of patricide, to the helm of the much less honorable pirate fleet he encountered by chance. Declamation constructs a world rich in twists and turns and reversals of fortune, but still decidedly workaday and banal, deprived of that allure of greatness that is required of the sublime in myth. Myth is thus programmatically unheroized and reduced to an often dark reality in which characters are motivated by murky reasoning and petty passions, similar in some sense to what has happened to the heroic age in certain rewritings of the Trojan myth. Dio of Prusa, Dictys of Crete, Dars of Phrygian, all basically contemporaneous with the period of the declamatory collections. Is that because a hapless land devoid of heroes? Sometimes, however, declamations to reach heights of sublimity. I have already mentioned Seneca the Elder controversy about a woman who, after being abducted by pirates and sold to a pimp, claims virginity when applying for the role of Vestal priestess. We have also underscored certain affinities with Greek novels of the imperial period. We can add that the motif of the virgin harlot returns in late antique narrative, and even in hagiography, with all those saints, from Agnes to Decla, who are forced by their pagan torturers to prostitute themselves as retaliation for not having disavowed their faith and yielded to their sexual requests. As Stelios Panatokes has documented, this theme reaches even Shakespeare, Pericles, Prince of Tyre. For the rhetoricians who devised that theme, however, the most immediate referent must have been Greek and Latin. New comedy, where women beloved by young men are often courtesans serving a pimp. In comedy, the enamored young man is often compelled to break off the relationship and marry a respectable woman, as happens to Pamphilus in Terence Hesira. It also happens that the young man is able to prove the meretrix free and honorable birth, thus making her a legitimate matrimonial option. However, when this occurs, it is necessary to show that even as a prostitute, the woman only slept with her future husband to preserve a fundamental anthropological compatibility. In the Senecan controversy, however, the female protagonist does not aspire to marriage, but to a priesthood, or to be a heroine. She is not then called upon to show her own link with a single partner, but the absence of any stain on her physical integrity, despite her prolonged sojourn with pirates and then in the service of a pimp. The debate, analyzed by Seneca, thus ends up touching on questions of high moral character, at least in the interventions that reject easy and distasteful vulgarity. Controversia 1.2 comes across as a reflection on key notions of Roman religious thought, such as chastity and purity, the only one the Roman world has left us, at least before the advent of Christianity. However partial and cursory this survey may be, Declamation nevertheless stands out as decidedly composite genre, capable of drawing on many cultural experiences and many texts, like composites, serps of texts and histories, literary in a strict sense, philosophical, historiographical, etc. Still to explore are Declamation's close ties with juridical reflection, we will do in a later chapter in this introductory course. Unraveling Declamation couplings, networks of allusions, and influences is not a straightforward operation. It must be done text by text in order to clarify the richness of the hints and models that the rhetoricians kept present to put to use. In any case, recent studies put the light to the idea that these are creations aimed at a simple exhibition of linguistics, flourishes, and rhetorical virtuosity. Instead, each declamation appears as the precipitate of a vast and multiform culture, belonging to a society that has behind it centuries of textual accumulation, and can draw on the deep reservoir to recombine elements in a virtually infinite number of variations. Said that, we have come to the conclusion of our chapter on the culture of Roman declamation. Short activity will be posted on your LinkedIn article section. Please put yourself into it. Research, write, read it out loud, proclaim it. Tormented by plague, they send an ambassador to consult the oracle. The oracle responds that they need to sacrifice the ambassador's son. Start but bad, powerful phrases, and then develop. Said that, I hope this content is of your interest. Please try to comment on the comment section in the LinkedIn article. If you feel interest about Roman declamation, how to craft it, how to make your oratory and declamatory skills better, send me a message. I will be very glad to help. We can do it also in Spanish. The thing is that almost all the content I have from the declamatory and declamation is in English. For the next chapter, we will be reviewing the politics of declamation, which is so powerful. We will be talking about censorship, tyrants, tyrannicides, and more of this loved and harsh, sometimes strong themes that can be out of our current society, but Things are unfolding into brutality now and then in our current world. So let's dive in, let's step in, let's become powerful orators, declamators, and let's have an applause by the forum, the classroom, or the boardroom. Thank you. This was lecturer Victor Romo, leadership coach, declamatory lover, and assistant if you want any help with your oratory skills. Goodbye, see you in the next chapter, Politics of Declamation. Please take a read on your activity, and if you feel compelled to, develop it. I will be glad to read you, to hear you. You can send me, you can post an audio, a short video, and it would be great. Goodbye. Have a great day. Let's continue the politics of declamation next month. Goodbye.